Hello again. During this holy month of Ramadan, the Dialogue Institute of Australia, through its New South Wales chapter, Affinity Intercultural Foundation, and now along with the Victorian chapter, the Australian Intercultural Society, or the AIS, has been pretty busy running these Ramadan conversations, as you can see, to keep us entertained, informed, and I think helping to keep us a little better connected in what is a really difficult time for the entire community. The AIS, by the way, for those of you that don't know, is a not-for-profit organisation that's been pre-9/11 world with the real aim of strengthening mutual respect and understanding between people of diverse communities, as you'll see through this next hour. And we're going to do it through meaningful engagement, which is absolutely. This year also marks the 20th anniversary of the Australian Intercultural Society. It's been quite a journey through these 20 years. It's helped pioneer many initiatives, including Open Days and, of course, Ramadan Iftar Dinner Program, which has become so very special and has been received so very well. Let me say Ramadan Mubarak. My name is George Donikian. We have three very special guests today, but before I introduce them, let me do the right thing and introduce or welcome my co-host, Fatih Tuncer. Fatih is an executive member of the Australian Intercultural Society, the AIS that I was talking about. In fact, he's been involved since the inception. Fatih currently works for local government in Aboriginal and cultural diversity, looking at strategic approaches to implementing principles of interculturalism across council that include things like placemaking, community development, urban design, open space, and build infrastructure, while working closely with Aboriginal and multicultural diversities. With an academic background in political and social sciences, Fatih has a real interest, in fact, a passion for earth ethics, for Islamic studies, as you'll find out. He knows an awful lot more than I do, and interculturalism. Now, Fatih, wonderful to have you finally as my wingman and co-host. What have you made of this year's Ramadan COVID-19 style?
Before I answer that, George, what an amazing introduction. I almost thought you were talking about someone else, but thank you for that. And I must say, I've been reflecting on this engagement. So finally, I get to be a wingman. And that means a lot to me because although there's about 5 years between us, I grew up watching you. And really, you're etched into the psyche of Australia, really, because for my parents' generation, you were the face of multicultural Australia. But for us that came afterwards, for those who were born and raised here, you are the face of Australia. So it's an absolute honour to be here with you tonight and to be your wingman. So I've got your back. So
thank you, mate. Well, with the responsibility, just answer the question: what have you made of this really strange time that we're all in, as you said, in the same boat?
That's right. Yeah. So it's been an interesting time because Ramadan is normally a time when the community is very vibrant. They get together. There's a lot of festivals going on. There's a lot of dinners that take place with friends, with family, with even strangers. And we were talking about Australian Intercultural Society. Australian Intercultural Society, like its sister organisation, Affinity Intercultural Society, it's all about service to humanity. We are all about service, and it's about promoting, connections between us. So it provides a platform for intercultural and interfaith dialogue. And a lot of the work we do is to build understanding and to not only look at other cultures through, dance and music and food, but really get down to the thought processes. What makes us us? And part of that is the organisations that we undertake for Ramadan. So, for example, every year the Australian Intercultural Society organises a series of organisational iftar dinners. And iftar dinners are breaking of the fast meals for those who might not know. And during a 30-day period, we have from 10 to 15 different organisational iftars. So that might include a dinner with Ambulance Victoria. That's our inaugural one. Dinner with the Vic Bar Association. Dinner with universities like Deakin University and Victoria University. And it's been almost 20 years since we started that. And that was with an iftar dinner at Victorian Parliament House. So over that period, we've held all these amazing iftar dinners. And on top of that, we also host home iftar dinners. And home iftar dinners are traditionally dinners that the public can access, and they'll go and or they'll go and enjoy dinner at a Muslim home and engage with that cultural experience. And this year has been particularly interesting because we haven't been able to do that. But what we did do was we opened that opportunity up on the online platform through Zoom. So now people get to enjoy each other's company, get to know more about one another, and we offer that online. So if anyone's interested, they're more than welcome to register through the Australian Intercultural Society website, which is intercultural.org.au. And I must also mention that next week we have a virtual iftar dinner with Victoria University, and so people can also express an interest to attend that. So it's been an absolute pleasure. It's been an absolute pleasure to be involved with Australian Intercultural Society and be part of this. So thank you, and thanks to the Australian Intercultural Society, to our director Ahmed Keskin and Ahmed Poulat from Affinity. And so,
well, they're both great characters, Fatih, and they also, both of them also like thinking outside the square. So to understand just how much disruption there's been in the marketplace and in the community and across the country and the world, and yet through the technology, bringing everything a little bit closer together and applying themselves and saying, no, we can do a virtual. Now, if only we can get the food delivered, that would be extra special virtual. But I suppose that is. Now, let's continue the program. Come on, you do.
yeah,
You start showing me your wingman style.
I will. So tonight we have a very interesting program, and not only will we be hearing from three special guests who have interesting and distinct contributions to provide to public discourse from the world of politics, the world of journalism, and the world of sports, but we'll also be enjoying a musical performance. So please stay tuned.
All right. Let's introduce then our first guest, Fatih. Our first guest is Maria Vamvakinou. She's a federal member for Cornwall, which is in the heart of multicultural Melbourne. And it has, I dare say, you're very aware of this, the largest Muslim community. And it has the largest intake of refugees in the state of Victoria. So she understands very well the plight of all those who are new to Australia. And we should also add, she's the first Greek-born woman to be elected to the Parliament of this country. In fact, Maria is the Deputy Chair of the Joint Standing Committee on Migration. She's also a member of the Joint Standing Committee on Foreign Affairs, Defence and Trade, which includes the Human Rights Subcommittee. Also, I dare say, because it brings back some memories for me, co-convener of the Parliamentary Friends of SBS. Mind you, I don't think she was an SBS viewer in the early days. Maybe she might tell me. She understands multiculturalism, which of course allows this particular program to host the largest interfaith dialogue at Parliament House every year. And it goes on and on and on. We need to bring her on board. Welcome to Ramadan Conversations, Maria Vamvakinou.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's lovely to be here. It's great to be here, George and Fatih. I'm really pleased that I'm going to be able to share this very special occasion with you both and everyone else watching.
Well, I think we got everything right. You're a huge SBS fan. You understand very well the journey of the migrant, and you're a migrant from the very first. Was it 4 years old? What? And you're a migrant from 4 years old.
I'm the post-Second World War mob that came along. I'm the New Australians. I am the New Australian. 58 years later, I hope I'm pretty much an older Australian now. But yes, I'm part of the New Australian. And George,
Fatih, have you got a question for this New Australian? Go on.
I do actually. I might get it going. So Maria, George mentioned in his introduction that the seat of Cornwall is very diverse, and we have a very diverse faith base there as well.
Right.
And as a member for Caldwell, can you provide some insights into how those faith communities dealt with the COVID restrictions, and particularly, keeping in mind that we've had some significant days of significance in the faith traditions, Easter, Ramadan, Vesak. So if there's anything that you can provide about that?
How have they coped? Yeah.
3 of the within that period of social and
I'm just wondering if we have some audio problems there and if we should start that question again.
People are very, very
Maria, can you hear me?
practicing of their faith. Yes, I can hear you.
I'm just sorry. I was just wondering if we had a breakdown in the audio there, and whether you should start that answer once again, if you don't mind.
Are we on?
Yes, we are. We're definitely on. I can now. Yes, thank you.
Major events that have taken place in the last 4 weeks within the social distancing period have been obviously Easter, Ramadan, and yesterday was Vesak Day. I have the largest Muslim constituency in Victoria. I've got a very big a Christian community, and Orthodox community. So these events are very important to my community. And starting with Easter, and even my own participation, Easter has been interesting for Christians because that too had to go on an online platform. And whereas you'd be familiar with the Holy Week and its importance, church attendance is very important during Holy Week. And in fact, it's the most popular church attendances for the year, actually. This time, of course, people couldn't go to church, and a lot of the churches began to live stream services. I actually got the opportunity to watch churches in Sydney, which I would usually Northcote, but on the Friday Eminence, the Archbishop in Sydney deliver the Mass. So that was a first. I enjoyed that, and I thought about how this is an interesting thing, because this could solve some of the problems that people have who are not able to actually attend church. I don't know how the older generation, I'm sure they couldn't computers, but children.
Maria, you mentioned you arrived in Australia as a 4-year-old.
Yes.
Can you hear me? You arrived in Australia as a 4-year-old, and the country that you arrived in is a very different country to the one we have today, right?
It is.
What I'm asking you to do as a federal parliamentarian is can you throw your mind forward and give us a sense of what this Australia of ours is likely to look like in 20, 30, 40 years' time? How post COVID-19, I'm thinking now, do we have to reimagine a vision for Australia? And what should it look like? What should we put in it to make it better?
I think irrespective, we can't allow COVID-19 to totally define everything we do into the future. I think irrespective of that, our current migration patterns themselves are telling us that in 30 years' time, our country is going to be a very different place. And in many ways, for us here in 2021, we're probably like the Aussies in 1955 and maybe 1954, 1948, that suddenly saw all these people coming to this country, and they might have felt a bit like, well, most of them, the southern, didn't look like those at that time. Obviously, Australia a different place to understand our identity in a much, we've got a greater understanding of what we look like and who we are. Some of us still can't accept that, but, we have to live with that. But most of us broadly understand that modern Australia is a multicultural country, and that also applies to the way Australians look. Now, I'm imagining in the next 30 years, with the number of people that are coming to Australia and becoming Australian from our Southeast Asian subcontinent neighbourhood, the face of this country is going to change again. And the whole question of Australian identity and what it means to be an Australian 30 years from now is still a story and a journey that is live and we're still participating in. And I think we need to be very mindful of that because our national identity is organic. It continues to grow and it's shaped by our immigration circumstances. And not to mention, I hope that in 30 years, by the time we get to 2050, we have resolved and reconciled our Indigenous inheritance. That's an issue in relation to what is Australia and the Australian identity. Needless to say, it's going to be about population as well. How many people there's, when we came to Australia, Arthur Corwell stared down that insular Australia, 7 million of them, and said to them, listen here, we can't hold this continent with 7 million people. We need people. And irrespective of what you think, we're getting them, and here they are. What is our population target going to be? And what sort of livelihood and employment is going to maintain that population? So there's big debate to be and conversation without the political divisiveness and wedging. We can't have these discussions if we're going to get caught up in us and them and who is and who isn't. These need to be
point scoring.
Absolutely. I mean, there's no place for that because immigration and population are the future of this country. They were when Corwell and that government started to bring the migrants in. Were, I guess, prior to that, the white government, and they'll continue. This is who we are.
Yeah, look, Harold Holt had a big hand in changing the way that the Australians of that day looked at Greeks, for a start. The Greeks pre-Corwell, or not pre-Harold Holt, rather, were persona non grata, and he changed the way that the public service at the time, or the public servants, viewed the Greeks, and he had a big hand in introducing assisted passage for the Greeks, who had been allies of Australia during World War II, and yet after the war they were put on the back burner when it came to wanting to arrive down under. So it was interesting times. We've seen great changes, but I commend you for saying that we need to put the point scoring aside, but think long and hard about what's to come, and then be 100% committed as a nation to go forward.
Well, George, you'll remember you asked before whether I was watching SBS. Well, I did. I did it from the days of 028. Now you were the man of colour, and I mean, my dad was a man of colour. We were olive-skinned, so in terms of shades, we've been for a very long time. It just goes to show how each generation with issues that the previous generation dealt with, and I just hope that as we're doing that, we do it with a greater wisdom and a greater knowledge about who we all are and what we should be. And I think that that's what's really important. And I just think it's absolutely critical that these sorts of discussions, are done in a way that are not divisive, because politics can be a great thing. It could also be the great underminer of great debates, and I'm a politician that says that, but I think that it's the kind of people say, well, that's your trade. Well, it might be, but I've learned a lot, and I've learned that, and we've seen this in the COVID-19 response from the National Cabinet, putting aside the politics and working in the national interests, has shown, I hope it's given Australians a bit more confidence in their institutions and in their politicians. I really do hope that, because you'd be aware, George, as a media person, how the media often can be just as destructive in these debates. They can be just as divisive
100%.
As politicians and opinion, writers and whatever. So, but I'm excited for Australia. I really am. I think we have the capacity to be in a good place in 30 years' time as a society. Our whole interfaith networks, the way in which we've managed multiculturalism is unique. It really is unique, and in all the world, and we're different to Canada as well. I don't care what anybody says. And the thing is, with the iftar dinners, I think the first one was in Parliament House. I must have attended the second one, which was in Sydney Road somewhere. Fatih, I don't know if you can remember where it was in Sydney Road, but I do. And those iftar dinners were critical because you'll all remember that was the beginning of the post-September 11
That's right.
period. And they were critical. Now we can sit around and have a discussion and enjoy the food. But in those days, the whole purpose of them was to actually respond to what was happening to our Muslim community as a result of what happened in New York. And the post-September 11 period, of which I have been in Parliament, has been a real challenge for this country, and it's been a challenge for our multiculturalism. But, and I can't stress how important iftar dinners and sharing and understanding of Islam has been to this country. And we've learnt a lot, and this is what will help us move forward in the next challenges, in understanding differences and accommodating and embracing diversity.
And learning
well said, Maria. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Yeah, there you go. Spoke really, really well, didn't she, Fatih? Gave us a sense of what's to come and how important it is for us to work together. And speaking of together, I know the next guest because we got to work together a number of years ago now. He is a man, though, who has an enormous passion for sport. I know him as Nathan Templeton. You probably know him as Nathan Templeton, the Melbourne correspondent for Channel 7's breakfast TV program, which I think is the #1 rating program in the country. It's called Sunrise. And with our conversation, what we're trying to gain tonight is some insight from Nathan as to what is happening around us during this global emergency. And, when you ask a media guy, it's always interesting to get the views of someone who's in the know and also right in the middle of the news. You get to hear a somewhat different perspective about the world we live in. So let's introduce him. Nathan Templeton, welcome to Ramadan Conversations.
Thank you very much, George and Fatih, and great to be with you. And Ramadan Mubarak to everybody out there who's observing. It's great to be here and to join you. And as you say, it's a very interesting time to be in the media. I know Sunrise in particular, but 7 News as well. The ratings have been extremely high during this time, partly because more people are at home when they would be at work. But there is
captive audience.
That's right, but there's definitely a thirst for knowledge, and people want to be updated and reliably updated on what's happening and what's going to happen next. So it's a big responsibility for everyone in the media to get it right and make sure people out there have the information they need.
And Nathan, on that, if I can hold on to that thought for a moment, recently we marked the World Press Freedom Day, and I noted that there were commentators had a real good think about press freedoms in the liberal democracies right around the world, and they were saying they're on the decline. Now, I want to get your thoughts on what is the changing nature of the newsroom. It itself is going through a tremendous change and a shift. I suppose on one hand, it's trying to balance audience interests, which generate, of course, what we call clickbait, that high click rate on their online platforms, against what they need to know because of the impact it will have on our lives, right? And one case study is this particular story that doesn't seem to go away, and it concerns a guy called President Donald Trump. Now, this guy generates clicks like nobody's business. But I think he does it because it's a matter of finding out what he said. You need to know. You click on, you go, what did he say? Did he really say that? But what do you say about this particular strategy of his, where if he doesn't like what you're telling him or asking him, he simply discredits it and says, mate, that's just fake news. So what's the role of the media in this changing landscape? Give us a sense of how anyone can cope with someone like a Donald Trump, and what is the role of modern media today? Because we need a strong, healthy media that doesn't have to scare us, but it has to inform us and educate us.
Yeah. I think perhaps the best way to answer it is sort of in two parts. One is the clickbait news versus what we might call real news, and the other one is about Trump. Now, I should say I don't want to spend too much time talking about what kind of person Donald Trump is and what type of job he's doing, because I'm sure you and all the viewers would agree on that. So we don't need to go down that rabbit hole, because we'd be here for 3 hours about what a horrible and dangerous human being he is. But I, as a journalist watching from the other side of the world, I have been a very interested observer in his media strategy. And the fake news thing has been discussed for a number of years, but I think it's become relevant again during this time when everything he's doing is even more scrutinized. And it pains me to say this, but there is some sort of genius in the simple phrase fake news, because it's a short, catchy, catch-all term that just means anything he doesn't like, he calls it fake news. And sadly, there are enough ignorant people in the US who, enough of them who voted for him and who believe it. And unfortunately, it's a very difficult obstacle for media to get around. And I have said over the past 3 or 4 years, sadly, some of the only people who are as bad at their job as President Trump are the very left-leaning media in the US. They play the man, not the ball, too much. It's very tempting to play the man when the man's Donald Trump, but he does enough bad things and blatant lies and horrible mistakes that you can report what he's doing straight up and down without bias, because what he's doing is bad enough, should see him out of office. But unfortunately,
you don't need to colour it, is what you're saying.
Exactly. The right media is so divided there more than it ever has been, and it is almost this sort of civil played out through the media. And I fear, unfortunately, and we're probably getting off topic here, but sadly, Bernie Sanders was probably 10 or 20% too liberal, and unfortunately, I think Joe Biden is going to be, a horrible thing to say, 5 or 10 years too old. And the people, they don't have the right candidate to bring him down at the moment. And hopefully his performance during coronavirus is going to be the thing that does bring him down. But I don't feel like they've got a really strong candidate to make sure of that. But one thing that was so tactless in his strategy during the COVID crisis was the way he suddenly started referring to it as the Chinese virus. And it was such a obvious tactic that it was to deflect from his inaction and the terrible job he'd done by creating a villain, an enemy. China's the enemy. That's who you should be going after. And Trump people, the MAGA hat wearers, he knows that they will buy into that. And it deflects from what he's done. China becomes the enemy, and suddenly the attention is off the things that he's done, or the things that he hasn't done. And again, I hate to say it, but he does have some very effective media strategies because he knows his audience.
Yeah, listen,
so Nathan,
one of the things we used to say in World News at SBS, I'm sorry, I intruded you. I was just going to say, one of the things we learned at SBS World News a long time ago is when leaders start to talk like that, it's saber rattling.
Yeah. And I think that's been his
and the sooner
strategy
they
all
stop
along.
that.
He was never going to come in and be. Yeah,
so Nathan,
absolutely. And Fatih, I think you were going to ask the question.
Yeah, that's right. No, I was going to
Get
say
it back, bring it back to sport.
Yeah, I will. So to focus on more positive news, as a person who still has an interest in sports news, because you come from a strong background in sports news, you also enjoy having an occasional kick of the ball and a swing of the bat, and this pandemic really has brought all that to a halt. The news still has a sporting segment on there, but really there's not much news on sport. So I was just wondering, Nathan, what's your feelings and how do you see sport in our daily lives, considering some people feel like there's some massive hole in their lives, as a lot of people play and follow sporting teams religiously, as we observe Ramadan, for example.
We just, absolutely. I mean, we just miss it. I mean, footy in particular in Melbourne for the Victorian viewers, it does feel like a hole. I should say my kicking these days is normally about 2 meters to my little son. There's not many long kicks happening these days, but I miss it, and I fear for the industry because we're starting to realise how many people are employed by. If I just AFL is sort of my thing. I know that there'll be people watching who love other sports, but if I could just talk about what I know best as an example. I used to always joke that sometimes when there's a controversy or a crisis at an AFL club, you stand outside the doors of Carlton, for example, and I can't believe the number of people wearing club polo shirts who walk into that club, and you think, what does that person do? What is their job within that club? And I think football clubs have become too big. And I know that there are people on the AFL executives who are concerned about that, that clubs were at risk. I mean, no one predicted coronavirus, but, if anything did go wrong, if there was some huge downturn economically, that clubs might not survive. And it's really sad, but a lot of people are going to lose their jobs. And for quite a long time, clubs are not going to be what they were. They're going to trim a lot of fat, so to speak, and that's probably a bit offensive to the people who lose their jobs. And of course, we don't want to make light of that, but they will run a lot leaner now. And, also broadcasters, I work at Channel 7. So many people are employed in that. To put a more positive spin on it, I do feel like when sport does come back, I hope that we might be able to just watch it and put a bit more pure joy, the love of the game, because we've missed it so much that I feel like there will be a bit more of a fraternity or camaraderie, or collegiality between different clubs and even different sports, just to say we need sport in our society. It's a good, positive, healthy thing, and we don't need nastiness between football, soccer, and AFL, NRL. We don't need even club rivalries. Let's keep it a bit more civil and fun rather than nasty. I hope that's what we come back to.
Nathan, you're someone who is called upon to start their working day a little earlier than the rest of us. I think your day these days starts at about 3:45 or something, doesn't it? Can you give us an idea?
Correct, yes.
A
That's when
day
my alarm goes
in
off.
the life of Nathan Templeton. What would it look like? Go on. You got a couple of new children in the household.
I started,
and you're a breakfast.
Yeah,
Go on.
Yep. I started with Sunrise 4 years ago. I was a sport reporter for the news, and I made the switch to Sunrise 4 years ago, and that was child-free days. And then Jack came along almost 3 years ago, and then 4 weeks ago, little James has come along. So my lifestyle has changed a lot during my Sunrise tenure. But yes, 3:45 the alarm goes off. Check my emails, check the news websites, and chat to the producers in Sydney to work out where I'm going. Drive myself out to the location and meet the cameraman there, and do my live reports throughout the morning. The show's on air from 5:30 till 9. And then it's almost split into two jobs. After 9 o'clock, when my live duties are finished, I'm sort of looking for stories and going out and filming things and feature stories. So it's a really interesting job. It's family friendly in the sense that most days, fingers crossed, I finish around lunchtime. So I'm home, get heaps of time with the kids and to support my wife, Kate. And so that's fantastic, but I'm pretty tired. So I need to be disciplined and put this stupid thing away and don't look at it in bed. That's the big challenge for everyone nowadays. So I love the job. I love the live component of TV, George, which I know you've been doing for many, many years. And, there's still a buzz to doing live TV. I love being on a national program. It's not just, Melbourne centric. So I do love that. And if you can manage your sleep and health and fitness and things like that, it's a fantastic job and an incredible opportunity to spend a lot of time with family. A lot of people don't get that. So I'm very lucky, but I'm pretty tired, especially on a Friday night, but I did have a nap today to get ready for this.
Well, mate, we really appreciate your contribution. We especially want to thank Kate for being the super mum she is and for being a great provider and great support to you. It takes two these days to run any family household, especially with two youngsters. Thank you very much for contributing to Ramadan Conversations. But more importantly, mate, continued good health. And let's hope your football team, what is it again? Which one it is? Is it again?
It's the Cats, and actually I've got something just for Peggy's benefit here. I'm not sure if he's watching.
Oh, here we go. Here we go.
I had this in the background, but I think the camera shot was too close. But this is my Cats teddy bear. So go Cats, and Peggy, you were very lucky in the preliminary final last year. But I can't wait for the footy to come back. And to be perfectly honest, quietly between us, I'd be happy to talk for another hour because I can hear Jack's not asleep yet. So maybe I could just leave Kate to do that.
Time to go.
Do the bath.
Time to go, Nathan.
All right. Good night, everyone. Thank you very much.
Have a
Well, George, wasn't that interesting? Good thing we don't have to wake up at 3 a.m. to do this.
So now, speak for yourself.
So to keep the program going, next, we're in for a treat because we have the musical performance, which is it's a song, it's a folklore song that is called On the Skirts of the Ararat Mountain, and it's a love song about Mount Ararat, and I'm sure, George, you would have a lot to say about Mount Ararat as well, and it's going to be
I do.
Performed by Emre Akın tonight, who'll be performing it with the Bağlama, which is also referred to as the saz. So over to you, Emre.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Hope you're all well. My name's Emre. Thank you for having me on the program. Hope everyone's staying safe during the current climate. Today I'll be joining with my Turkish instrument called the Bağlama. Hope you enjoy. Thank you.
Yeah, Bakalama. Emily doing another great job. Really appreciated that. Fatih, our final guest for this evening is someone you know very well. Her name is Peggy O'Neill, president of the Richmond Football Club since 2013. She served on the board, I think, since 2005. She's a consultant to Lander and Rogers, and she's specialised in superannuation and financial services law for more than 20 years. Obviously, a partner early on at Herbert Smith Freehills, which is one of those companies that has had an array of stars. And she was just one of those smart women that really started to show everyone around her how capable she was. Well, she served in many roles in the corporate world, and she's been recognised for that tremendous work of hers and her community efforts. I think in December of 2018, it was only right that Peggy was awarded an honorary doctorate of laws by Swinburne University. And it didn't end there. Her football club thought enough of her efforts that in 2019, they encouraged everyone around us to say, hey, listen, she needs to be made an officer rather of the Order of Australia. So let's welcome Peggy O'Neill, AO. How are you, Peggy, and welcome?
Fine, thank you.
Welcome to this unique program and an opportunity for us to cover some territory and talk about some issues that are impacting a whole lot of people. But the thing that fascinates me at the moment is there's the talk of mental health and the impact that COVID-19 has had and is still having. How do you feel things are progressing, and what can the Richmond Football Club, which has played a tremendous part in the community over the last 10, 15 years, what more can it do, especially in these very trying times when there's so much disruption going on?
Oh, well, thank you, George. But I think that the mental health impact of what we're going through will probably ripple for a while, and it may not be immediately while people are still just trying to cope with day to day. But I think for the next few months, we need to be aware of taking care of our mental health and putting our hands up if we need assistance. If anything, I think the message coming through is don't be afraid to ask for help, because we're all in this together, literally, and some people will be able to cope better than others depending on their circumstances. Some people will have lost loved ones during this period, which is and in a way that is so unique that you can't really mourn and come together as a community to grieve. And that's one side. But then there are people who just miss the socialization, who don't have the community support they maybe once did. And so I think that we need to be aware that a lot of people are doing it tough from a mental health aspect as well as from physical health and, of course, financial as well. But what role can Richmond play is, I think that sport generally is part of the fabric of the community. It's part of that support network that a lot of people have built up over time, whether it's community sports.
Especially this most livable city of Melbourne.
That's right. And going to a game or playing a game on the weekends, whether it's tennis, community sport, state sport, or just attending your favorite sporting team's professional competition, you make friends that way. And you have that human interaction that goes a long way to making you feel like you're part of something. And at Richmond, we think we've stated our purpose to be connecting to thrive and win. And that connection part, it's not just the people who work at the club, it's with their 103,000 members we're lucky enough to have. And so we've made an effort to make them all feel like they're connected to us. But when you can't reinforce that with that contact that we're used to having and gathering at the MCG and cheering on our team together, and sometimes that's almost incidental, the game, to being around people that mean a lot to you or come to mean a lot to you over time. I get a lot of correspondence from families talking about how much they miss having this to do together. And in times where people have had losses, they remarked to me about the fun time they had as a family going to sporting competition. So I think that we need to keep that connection going with our members and supporters as best we can. making people realize that we still care about them, even if we aren't all attending a game together. And I think that we'll probably appreciate the value of sport more than ever, because we know what it's like now to have it absent.
I'm a huge. I'm sorry. I'm just going to say, just following up there. I'm a huge Yankees fan, and one of the things that the Yankees have done for years and years and years, they've instituted a thing called Hope Week, and where the players, the entire squad of players, and we're talking about players who are earning extraordinary salaries, get out there as one, representing the brand, but also representing their city and their boroughs. And that's been a fantastic thing. Have you considered doing something like that through these times? And I know there have been one or two examples, but maybe doing something more to the various communities, especially in this downtime when they're not playing.
Well, yes, we have had quite a bit of engagement, and like, for example, today, one of our junior players has taken over the Instagram account, so we follow him for the day about what he's doing, and
that's a bit dangerous.
Keep an eye on him. We have things on our website where players talk about what they've done that day. Some players are, training alone, most of them. We have another player who's driving across the Nullarbor from WA to get back here over the weekend, and he's got quite a few good stories about that. So I think that's the part about feeling that even though we're not seeing a game, we still know each other as people, and that we can still feel like we're part of the little bit that's going on from that team aspect. But then there's the whole community around people who worked at the club who aren't there anymore. And our CEO and our head of people have had town hall meetings with them, and people can call in and talk, and we do that once a week. And then there's smaller teams that get together, and the virtual Friday night drinks that used to all get together and have a beer in the boardroom. Now they do it that way. So I think it's just trying to maintain that connection, and the Yankees idea is a good one. It's aimed at the same thing, that we're still here for you, and the game is important, but you're more important.
My second most important person is my wingman, and Fatih has been dying to come in and add his bit. So go for it, Fatih.
Yeah, I was just going to follow on from the fact that this time is unprecedented, and we don't know what the effects of this are going to be going into the future in terms of finances, etc. And I know that you've appealed to your members. You've asked your members to let the club know if they are going through difficulties, if they're having issues paying for their membership. So how has that been going? Have there been a lot of people that have been contacting the club and explaining that they're facing some difficulties?
No, there haven't been a lot, which is good news that people are doing it pretty well so far. We're still early into this. We have heard from a few people, and we've made arrangements with them, as we would in any year if people call, and because a lot of people are on installment plans. It's every month, a certain amount comes out of your on your credit card. And so if they call and say, we want to stop it, we've stopped it in the past. But the overwhelming majority of members that we've heard from have said they want to stay the course if they can. We know some people have joined who've never joined before, saying, I've had such fun with the Tigers, I feel like now's the time to put some money behind you. We've had some people give us additional contributions just because. So we have a really loyal Tiger Army out there, and we feel for those members who would otherwise want to be with us but are in a terrible financial circumstance right now. And we're happy to take their phone calls and to work with them on doing something to alleviate that financial stress.
We're talking to Peggy O'Neill, the club president of the Richmond Football Club, on Ramadan Conversations. And Fatih was going to do a little follow-up that I just clipped him on. So go for it, Fatih.
Peggy, I was just going to say, with that Tiger Army, we know that Richmond is renowned for its work in the community, especially diverse communities. So I was wondering if you could touch a bit more about the importance, or what did you find through Richmond, the importance about reaching out to those communities, and how is that facilitated? Well, we thought that diverse communities was really just
a basic business critical thing we needed to do. We wanted everybody who had any interest in football to be behind the Richmond Football Club. We also realized that the face of Australia is a diverse face. There are lots of people from many countries, and I myself am an immigrant. And I know that finding a team makes you feel like you belong, and it makes you find a place in this community more quickly than if you're left to your own devices. And that's that great support that comes from having a common cause or enjoying doing something together. And we recently have put together a diversity and inclusion action plan, and that's sort of the way that it's being implemented. We've had a reconciliation action plan with the Indigenous community for many years, and we thought we need to put a framework around what we intend to do and then follow up and measure ourselves on doing with diversity and inclusion action plan. And that's really what's guiding our operations right now. Of course, in the current circumstances, that's had to go in abeyance for a little while, but we're committed to, as soon as we can all get back to work together and see our way forward, is that still part of our strategic plan to keep that going. And I think that that what we want to be known for is not words, but actions, and that we actually have authentically want this to happen. And I know that from the people from different cultural and religious backgrounds that we have at the football club, it just makes the club such a better place to work. And I think that gives us an insight into what the various communities are interested in and how we might deliver on that. Sometimes it's not as if people are ignored, but we don't understand what it takes to include. And so the more people we have in the organization who understand what it takes to include people who might feel marginalized, the better off we all are. And it's just been a very enriching experience for us.
Peggy, you've been rewarded by the likes of Basher Hooley and also the young boy you brought straight out of the VFL to play in the grand final, and he basically won it for you off his boot. So when you talk diverse communities, when you talk small communities, the one thing that the Richmond Football Club has done, and I must add, I've also worked as the voice of the G over the last couple of years, and I've had to do a number of Richmond games, and when the Tiger Roar is let loose, you certainly feel it, the whole stadium rumbles. But one thing that I'm absolutely thrilled to bits, and I'm talking as a Carlton man, and I'm thrilled to bits because I see this.
I like to hear it.
No, I'm thrilled because it shows me how successful you can be if you reach out. And you talk of, and the Richmond Football Club speaks of, many tribes but one team, right? Or many communities but one tribe. And that tribe is the Richmond Football Tribe. And I think that has been part of your messaging that has helped you enormously, especially over the last couple of years, bring so many other people to the club that has allowed you to, touch 100,000? Have you got 100,000 members yet?
Well, we had 103,000 last year. This year,
wow.
We have about 97,000 right now.
I thought you were just bragging there when you went 103,000.
No, it's fact. No brag, just fact.
Okay. But it has made, from the outside, you can see it's palpable. That messaging has been really strong and focused. And I'm sure that's something you started thinking about strategically well before the last couple of years when you've seen so much success on the field.
It is something that's very important to us, and as long as I've been on the Richmond board, which is a lot longer than I've been president, I joined the board in 2005, is our first strategic plan. After that, we had 5 pillars, and one of those pillars was community engagement. And every strategic plan and every iteration after that, community has always been a big pillar that we think is important. And I say, well, we were waiting to win games and took us many years to get around to being winners again. You got to stand for something. You got to make people proud of something you're doing, even if you can't always point to wins and losses. And wins and losses is what a football club does. But at the same time, you have a great platform to do things in the community. And people often listen to their sporting heroes in a way that they don't listen to politicians or the church anymore or that sort of thing. So it is an important responsibility. And we thought that reaching out to everyone. As I said before, if you want to join a team, and that's not just the team on the field, if you want to be part of a club that wants you, and we'll do everything we can to make sure you feel included, we want you to come with us. And when you were mentioning the things that have happened, recently about Sydney Stack coming and then Marlon Pickett coming, I think a few years ago we might not have been able to handle that as well as we did. And I think it's because we've been educated, and as I said before, we have people at the club from a lot of different communities now, so we have great experts to go to. And people say, I'm not sure that we could have taken a chance on whoever it might be. But I think now we're at the point that we were before this happened anyway, that we can really make people better individuals and find the place in society that might otherwise have been denied them because of the diversity of people who work there and our commitment to making it work. And I'm just amazed every day at how much work goes on at the club in all of these various communities. And I think our fans do tell us, for example, our national charity partner is the Alana Madeline Foundation. We play a game every year that's the Alana Madeline Foundation round. We have people who join the club just for that game because a membership for that day goes totally to the Alana Madeline Foundation. And so you see that cause strikes a chord with people where football might not, but that cause does. And at the same time, we get to raise a lot of money for Alana Madeline. So that's part of who we are too. And I think the messaging is we want to do as much good as we can with the platform that we have.
Well, Leslie Podesta is a big part of the Alana Madeline setup, and also she's a huge Richmond woman, loves the club, loves the work that you do, and of course, even that commentary is even more poignant when you consider we had a recent opportunity to remember that dark day in Tasmania that saw Alana Madeline, and we named the foundation after them. It's a fantastic amount of work the club does, and Fatih and I were talking just before you came on about another great character who has been more than a warrior. He's been an ambassador. We're talking about young Bashir Hooley, and I can say young because I'm a whole lot older than he is, but he's probably an elder statesman now at the club. But tell us what does he mean to you as the president to have people of that caliber? And you have a lot more people, but you know what I'm talking about.
Well, I look back and think how lucky were we that Bashir Hooley came over to the Richmond Football Club when he did. He's an exceptional footballer. We saved his best for grand finals, as we found out. But he's really an exceptional person. He's just a national treasure as far as I'm concerned. And his patience, his willing to educate us, he's got a position of responsibility that he takes very seriously. We love being able to support what he is doing, and his Bashir Hooley Foundation is going to be housed at Punt Road, and that's already underway. So we hope his playing days go on for a while, but after they're done, the work of that foundation is still going to continue, and we're so pleased that it's going to be part of us for a very long time. But Bashir is a tremendous person. I haven't been fishing with him, but he says he catches big fish too. But no, he's so well regarded around the club, and his work in the community is just unparalleled. So we're very, very fortunate he's with us.
And Peggy, so Bashir Hooley is an observant Muslim, and we're in the month of Ramadan, which is a time where we fast and we refrain from drinking and eating, any type of liquid, whether it's water or coffee, etc. And some people can't believe that he performs with no fluids. Do you have any insights into this? And how does his...
Well, no, I'm amazed. I saw something on, it might have been on our website today that talked about how much better his performance was during Ramadan than and then the lead up to Ramadan in the past. And he seems to sort of just love the challenge, is what I think. He's a very competitive person. And I remember the first year that I was really paying attention and knowing that he was fasting. And I thought, how can he even move another way that I feel after missing a meal, much less go out and do professional sport at the level that he does. But I think he sets it as a personal challenge. That's the only explanation that I can give. He's not giving me any hints. I think it just shows his commitment to his faith and his commitment to football, and that you can do both.
Peggy, it's been a delight having you with us to join us for Ramadan Conversations. We thank you very, very much for giving it once again an insight into some of the things that go on behind the club and how many elements and sectors there are in the club, and allow it to become this giant in the community. We thank you again. We wish you every success. Mind you, the only time I don't wish you that much success is when Carlton plays Richmond.
Well, we've played once this year. I don't know if we'll play again, but
I've forgotten about it.
Okay, it was a long time ago, but thank you very much, Ramadan.
Thank you, Peggy O'Neill. How good is Peggy O'Neill, Fatih?
Fantastic. I could have had another hour asking her questions.
The question you asked about, it's amazing how he fasts and he can play great football. I should tell you, you're just not quite old enough to remember the days when people didn't speak about hydration. And coaches used to say, you don't need to drink any water, just keep running. I'll tell you when you can drink. So we've come a long way.
No, definitely.
Mate, it's almost time for us to wrap up the show. Thank you very much for co-hosting. It hasn't been 100% because of the bandwidth, but you've been magnificent.
George, thanks to you. I mean, it's been a pleasure being your wingman, and I hope I did my role justice, and I look forward to more of these engagements.
Mate, we'll do it again, absolutely. We'll get you to wear a different number, that's all. Listen, wherever you might be watching this Ramadan Conversations, we trust you've enjoyed it. The next episode of Ramadan Conversations is scheduled for tomorrow evening, and I've got to say, Fatih, it's a special event. You want to tell them what it is?
Tomorrow night? Should we keep it a secret?
Come on.
Or should I announce it right now?
No, tell them. Announce it.
We have a star on the show, and it's an international star. It's a basketball star, and it's in
an NBA star.
NBA star. That's right. So Enes Kanter will be on the show tomorrow night, and so if you're into NBA and basketball, make sure you don't miss it.
And also, if you're a Boston Celtics fan, you've got to come and join us for Ramadan Conversations. And it's made doubly special, Fatih, because former Socceroo and SBS chief football commentator, the one, the only Craig Foster, will be on board. So my suggestion, don't miss it. For those of you wondering, if you want to catch this episode, you might have joined us halfway through. It's going to be uploaded to the AIS YouTube channel very shortly. However, our next Melbourne broadcast will air Monday, the 18th of May, when we get a chance to speak to someone you touched on earlier, the CEO of Ambulance Victoria, Tony Walker. We'll catch up with a great friend of ours from the ABC, Karen Percy, and one of the board members or the advisory members of the AIS, the man from Deakin University, Professor Greg Barton. Yeah? Okay, and should you wish to catch up with any previous conversations or view this one again, as I mentioned earlier, they're all available on the Affinity YouTube channel. Once again, stay safe, have a blessed Ramadan, and Fatih, thank you for joining us, doing a great job.
Thank you, George. Ramadan Mubarak.